when you start the process of casting, I tend to immediately pay attention to a picture of a person. If they're interesting, then I look at everything they've done so far. So I caught this show called Normal People. It's not my kind of thing I would normally sit and watch, but the two actors were very good. And from that, I then binged on 8 hours. And at the end of it, I made my mind that Paul would be the Lucius and Gladiator. That was it. That's how simple it is. But you got to do your homework.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a former prince turned gladiator attempts to restore the glory of ancient Rome in director Ridley Scott's historical epic, Gladiator II. The sequel to Gladiator takes place years after the events of the first film and follows Lucius, who as a child witnessed the revered hero Maximus die at the hands of his uncle. After his home is conquered and he is forced to fight as a gladiator in the Colosseum, Lucius attempts to reclaim everything he has lost. In addition to Gladiator II, Scott's extensive directorial credits include the feature films Napoleon, The Last Duel, House of Gucci, All the Money in the World, Alien Covenant, Prometheus, Robin Hood, American Gangster, Hannibal, Blade Runner, and Alien. He is a 4-time DGA Award nominee for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Feature Film for 2015's The Martian, 2001's Black Hawk Down, 2000's Gladiator, and 1991's Thelma and Louise, and in 2017 was honored with the DGA's Lifetime Achievement in Feature Film Award. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Scott spoke with director Fede Alvarez about filming Gladiator II. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
So what about that film, huh? Just to give you a frame of reference, in the time that I made Alien Romulus, he made Napoleon and this. So, he's the youngest one here. So, tell me about one of the first things I want to know, when I met you and I started watching these films, is always kind of the beginning of your process. It's been said that the hardest thing about making movies is to actually choose the goddamn movie, what is the movie? But it seems like for you, that's not a challenge. You seem to know what you want to do right away. Is that true? Or has that evolved through the years?
Well, the plan is there's absolutely no plan. And there never was right through school, so I was completely very bad academically, and all I could do is draw. And so that becomes the base of my career. I can draw all my own boards, but that makes me very efficient. By doing that, because you're filming on paper in your head before you get there, when I'm finished the film, and having used 11 cameras by now, because that's why we do this in 49 days. 59, did this in 51 days. But you got to know where to. Don't try it if you don't know where to put the camera. Otherwise, you'll be still talking about it at 5 o'clock. But we actually shoot. I get going 8:45 every morning. Bang, and you're off and running. And we're doing Woody Allen hours, finishing at 6 o'clock in the evening, taking a walk. So the crew have a life of their own. But you have to know. Yeah, because people forget. I say wrap, thanks boys, and walk. The crew's got an hour and a half packing up and cleaning cameras, and people forget that.
So there's another thing I think you told me early on about this process of choosing the movie, where you said, I get the script and I go, let's go. I don't start to give notes on the script, because you turn a go movie into development. You don't want that. You just want to go, and then you kind of figure it out, which I think it's so brave in a way, because most of you probably heard the story about, and you fact check me if it's right, but on Gladiator 1, there was like roughly, I think you ripped all the bad pages and you were left with 20 pages and you still went to create something as epic as that movie. And so it shows an incredible amount of bravery, but also it's still like that. Do you still do that where you go, okay, I'll figure it out. It's an organic process. You figure out in your drawings that, do you still do it that way?
No, I'm actually pretty good with writers, believe it or not. Are there any writers in the room? No. Are there any writers in the room? Yeah, so I'm actually quite good with writers, and slightly worse with actors. But with that, once I think there's an idea there, or the script is there, rarely does a perfect script land on one's desk. And the last good one for me was actually Martian. Actually, everything else takes evolving and writing. So, and my best experience here ever was, I came to Hollywood, my first film called The Blade Runner. And Hampton, who's a great writer, who I think lives in New York now, I hope he's still alive, he had this beautiful play he had written in a nutshell, where the hunter falls in love with his quarry and vice versa. And he, I think, written it for himself because it was all contained in this apartment. And from that, I said, listen, your writing's great, the great idea. I said, but when he steps out the door, I want to see what the world's like to be able to support this idea of creating a human being. From that, we start every day for 5 months and evolved into this huge epic that at the end of the day came out and Pauline Kael killed me stone dead. But actually, that was my best experience as a writer.
No, and you always figure it out somehow. It's like, I guess there's a theme or something you cling to, and you go, like, okay, that's exciting enough, and that you're not scared of, whatever process you have to go through, you'll do it and you deliver. So when it comes to actually, once you have a script and it's amazing what you've done with cast, right? Because, people obviously, you guys know, like from Brad Pitt and Thelma Louise, like the Russell, of course, but it's so Sigourney, so many actors that you discover. So what do you look for in those? What do you, when you sit down and watch cast? Is there any process there? What do you look for in acting?
Well, it's kind of because we're dealing in pictures. Who said a picture's worth 1,000 words? Was that Hitchcock? Geez, you're not a very bright lot. Jeez. I think it was Hitchcock, because he used to draw all his own storyboards. And so when I'm drawing, I usually have something in mind, usually dark or blonde or whatever it's going to be. And when you start the process of casting, I tend to get immediately pay attention to a picture of a person. If they're interesting, then I look at everything they've done so far. If hopefully that they've done things before, so I look at everything they've done to see what they've got in their palette. What are they like as actors? And that said, with Paul Mescal, I tend to watch TV, but I tend to watch the end that has low budget movies. And BFI have a good kind of little channel. So I like to look at incoming rather than outgoing. I mean, I'm included as outgoing, right? So incoming is very interesting. So I caught this show called Normal People. It's not my kind of thing I would normally sit and watch, but the two actors were very good. There's Paul and the gal. And from that, I then binged on 8 hours. And at the end of it, I made my mind that Paul would be the Lucius and Gladiator. That was it. That's how simple it is. But you got to do your homework. And once you've got the right person, the first thing I do is make a partner of the person, as the actor or the actress. I get to know them when we talk, so they loosen up. And I want to encourage them to come out and be my partner in the process.
Everybody directs differently. I thought there was a way of doing it, and the more I meet directors and you talk about how they do it, there's no one way, right? Everybody does it differently. I'm really curious about what is this is a very simple question, but I'm so curious about how you do it, like particularly because you have so many cameras. Like you show up on set, it is Monday, 6 a.m. in the morning, and you have a scene let's go with simple. It's 2 actors on a table. Like what do? You tell them what is right away. You rehearse a little bit before you. How do you do it? Okay, 2 people talking, like you've seen in this movie a few times.
The only way of answering this is take my hat off to cameramen who actually have to put up with me and 11 cameras. Okay, because I know exactly where to put them. but because I preconceived the scene. So that sounds awful for the actors and awful for the cameraman, because I'm saying I'm keeping it to myself. They all know way before we get to the floor. So the boards are then distributed. And if an actor or actress says, why can't I do this? I said, listen, let's see yours first, and then you can see mine. And frequently I've sat there, and then the actors in the room. So, they would act it out, and they usually end up two guys standing in the middle of the room talking, and they said, that's really boring, and that's really boring. So there is a geometry to every scene. Even if the scene is simply two people sitting at a table, or a lot of movement in the scene, or a punch-up, you have to have that in your head. So I always go in knowing exactly what I want. By knowing exactly what I want, there's a freedom to that, so I can then encourage people to put in ideas as well.
Yeah, you always figure out a way to make. There's never a dull moment in your movie. That's what I'm always fascinated. I'm watching, and maybe I'm watching a movie. I'm fascinated with it. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm not particular, but there's something about it. I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I remember my friends shooting, and we always say, let's do the Ridley Scott thing, and we'll put a fan with like volumetric light spinning in the room. So it was a thing you invented, as far as my concern, in the late 80s, early 90s, and everything became so much interesting. It was just this volumetric dynamic light. So you're definitely a master, and this movie has plenty of those moments. How a scene that on paper you go, well, there are two people talking, you figured always a way to make them fascinated. Okay, tough question. Difficult actor. For me, I'm 46. I haven't dealt with many big stars. You have dealt with all of them, and they're difficult. I mean, actors can be, as everybody knows in this room, particularly a star can be really difficult. They're sitting at a table. It's going to go, I'm not sitting. I'm not saying any of this line. So, what is there a magic way to deal with that? Because for me, it's the worst day on set when the actor doesn't want to do it, and he's someone important. Have you figured out a way around that? One of the biggest nightmares for us directors.
Well, I carry some weight, so sometimes I scare the shit out of them. So that's the first way of answering that. But then way back when I always remember doing The Duelist, my very first film. And by then I was a really top-notch commercial maker. And my only competitors at that time were honestly Adrian Lyne and Alan Parker. The rest, and it was a growing industry. I got to do a film. I never remember my first time until I'm 40. And I was so successful, I wasn't noticing time was flying. But I got this low-budget film going called The Duelist, and I needed a guy called Fouché. And Fouché was the mean guy in the political scene in Paris at the time. And Diana Quick was this wonderful actress I had in the film as a courtesan. And she said, Albert will do Fouché. I said, I can't afford Albert. And so she said, well, he'll do it for nothing if you show him the rushes. So I showed him the rushes, and he did it for a crate of red wine. But when he came in, he was only probably my age, because I would be 40. Albert maybe even 45 or something. But he scared the shit out of me, because his presence at that particular moment was so monumental, and his reputation. Yet he's the simplest guy, very straightforward. Denzel is probably one of the finest actors we've got in America, right? And Denzel's earned his right to be tough. And that said, he doesn't, not long on explanations, okay? And I'm not long on explanations, so we get on very well. I mean, when we did American Gangster, which I think one of my favorite films, he was a bit nervous at me being all by myself where we were shooting at that particular time. It was a kind of dangerous zone, which I was quite touched by that. I didn't think he cared that much.
So going a bit on the post side of thing, I remember, I think when I show you the first cut of Alien Romulus of my film, you asked me, you look at it, give me your thoughts, and you said how many days, how many times a week do you go to editorial? You said, I'm there every hour of the day, every day, Monday to Saturday. But yes, how many? Which it was how many days should I go? And you said you should be there maybe once a month or every other week to look at it, because this is really great advice. Our biggest tool is our objectivity as a director. And the more you're there, the more you lost sight of what is the thing you're doing? So, but I remember walking out of that and going, God damn it! Like I'm doing everything wrong. I'm there all day. I'm supposed to be there once a month. But then I thought, like maybe he didn't do that when he was making his fourth movie. How's that evolved for you? Like how much involved? How much? I'm sure you have figured out what's the right amount of percentage you need to be involved, and when you have to step back. How's that evolved through the year, through the movies?
Oh, you've got to first of all have a great editor. And I eventually ended up, I've always found great editors. And I discovered when you sit in an editing room behind the editor, you usually fall out within about 2 weeks because you're either saying, make the cut, or he's usually taking too long and pondering, which drove me crazy. And so I then decided, once I've delivered the film, the editor in a way becomes my book editor because I've delivered him the pages of the book. And a great book editor will then say, you need this, you don't need that. So I said, step away, let him get to it or get her to it. And actually I'll go, when I'm filming, they edit from day one. I don't sit and say, no one touches these rushes until I finish the movie. God, that's expanding into a 2-year process. So I usually let them go at it from day one. And I turn up every Saturday morning and look at what they've got. I'll comment and move on. And then usually because of that, we usually have a director's cut 3 weeks after principal photography is finished. So that tells you how efficient it is. Same with mixing. Don't sit in the mix. It'll just get louder because your ears turn inwards and you'll have like a Michael Bay movie. It's Michael. Sorry, Michael. But your hearing is gone because all you do is get bigger and louder and louder. And I step away. So they say, we got a reel. I go in. And so amazing how clean you are because I become the clean one then. So I say, that, and that. That's it. And so you become useful at that point rather than one of the everyone's gone kind of tone deaf.
No, and it is, I think, I think the goal of what we do at the end of the day is, I'm sure a lot of you heard this principle, what's called the 2080 principle, right? That is this analysis that says that 80% of the success of something depends on that 20% of elements involved in it, right? So the more movies you make, usually the more you realize, you find yourself, I'm sure it happens to you all the time, that everybody's concerned about one particular element. They come to you go, and everybody goes, how could he doesn't care? And it's because that's inside the percentage that won't make much of a difference. And you learn to be really surgical about like this is the part that really makes a difference, like the end of a movie, the cast, whatever it is that that I definitely don't. But, you process that more and more and more. And I think that is what I've seen in your process, that you really managed to narrow down what is the things, where you have to be there. Right? I
mean, everyone has their own way, so you got to do your own thing, of course. What I do is I distance myself. As soon as I finish, I distance myself. Within a week, I'm starting my next subject. So I'm already going to be shooting my next film within about the next 5-6 weeks. So it enables you, it frees you up to go away, clear your head, come in, be very perceptive when you can then really help the edit or really help the mix. But if you've got to sit in the room and drive on crazy, do so. It's your time.
Is it... When I try to try to do with your movies is hard, but you will know, they say directors will make the same movie over and over. It's always a different version of a similar theme. Have you, like, looking back, watching your movies, go like, oh boy, I realize I have a thing with this? Is there one particular theme that kind of sneak up on you that you didn't even realize, that you choose movies that has a certain theme or idea or relationship? Is there anything like that?
No, they're all great.
That's what they have in common.
If it doesn't work, somebody didn't sell it properly.
Well, look, talking about that, I mean, I tell you, this is a true story.
Dude, I've did 2,500 commercials. I know advertising so well, and I'm never consulted about advertising.
Yeah, whenever people ask me about working with you, one of the takeaways, one of the best advices is things that not a dream of advice, something I learned just by spending time with you and collaborating in a movie. Is a massive thing. This is really important. It's like you told me, like, you got to love every movie you make like your children, right? You love them all equally, not dependent on their successes and failures, and that's so important. I mean, I find myself naturally liking my movies that did better than the ones that did not so well. And I felt if you think about it as your kids, it's unfair. You got to love them all. And it's a way better attitude. And it's the attitude you definitely have.
Are there any critics in the room? Okay. So one thing I learned very quickly after Pauline Kael destroyed Blade Runner in 4 pages, I didn't even meet her. And to me, it almost walks in the column of industrial espionage because you're destroying a product before it's out. This is in the New Yorker. So I was hurt. I was actually hurt. Even at 44, I can get hurt, okay? And I wrote back a note to the New Yorker saying, listen, if you hate me that much, just don't print anything, ignore me, but don't spend 4.5 pages of destruction. But the thing for me, what really became useful, I framed that as still in my office today, and taught me this: there's only one critic that means anything, and that's you. So,
talking about that, there's this. I asked you this question a few days ago, but and I love the answer, but I want to spoil it for anybody. I just ask you the question again. I was telling Ridley, if you go through your career, like, you obviously start amazing movies, Alien and Blade Runner and 91, Thelma and Louise. But then I think all of us in the 90s, there was a rebellion against anything good of the 80s. Everything that was great in the 80s, 90s rebel, right? And so, and there was all these filmmakers coming up. And so most of the 90s, you obviously did, Conquest of Paradise, did White Squall, you did G.I. Jane, and they're great movies, but they weren't out massive hits. They didn't work out that well. And at that point, you're 60 something. And I felt like I had my first flop when I was 40, and I felt, okay, I'm done. I got to pack my, I'm done. I'm out of this business. I felt destroyed emotionally. I felt like I had to quit. You were at that point, you made 3 movies that didn't really work. You were 60 something. And I would say at that point you go, and you were busy doing commercials, you were doing fine. But in the movies, that was happening. And I asked Ridley, what the fuck did you learn or saw at 98, 99, when suddenly everything changed? Because there's very few, changes in a filmmaker and a career of director like the one you had at that point, where suddenly Gladiator comes out and you never stop a day. Like from that point on to today, you've been making incredible films, epic films, David Lean epic size films that no one else does. So it asks really, what happened? What changed from a decade that was kind of slow to suddenly a change in attitude, a change in ability? What happened? What do you think happened there that made you change so radically?
It's a long answer, okay. I was 38, realized I hadn't done a movie, so I had enough money to be able to find a writer, pay him, pay for the book, etc. And so from that, we've got a prize at Cannes with the first film was pretty good. And the studio here made 7 prints. So my producers, Lord Putnam, I said, is this normal? He said, no, it's not. They really don't know what to do with it. So the Jews had 7 prints in the United States. So, but I think it was a great first film. So then I do Alien. What I learned with Alien is when you get something, and I was the 5th choice. Robert Altman was just before me. Why would you give Robert Altman Alien to do? That's not very smart. He must thought, what? So because I'm a comic aficionado of not adult comics, but serious comics, because in a way, Alien and Blade Runner are very dark comics, okay? And Blade Runner in particular is a very dark comic. And so the studio said, so what do you want in the script? And I learned, if you speak too much, you'll turn a Go film into a development deal. So you shut the fuck up. And you say, it's wonderful. Really, no problem. No, it's great. So now I'm out here. And in the time they take to decide to see me, I've drawn a storyboard for the first 20 minutes. So now the budget of the film was 4.2, which is 4 times what the jewelers cost, 800,000, right, all in. And I turn up there with my boards, and they look at the boards. And this is key. A vision is key, because that budget changed from 4.2 to 8.4 overnight. Laddie saw what it could be. He just doubled the budget. So then I do Blade Runner. She destroyed me. Then I did Legend. That didn't work either, but it's running today. It's a bloody good movie. And I was 25 years ahead of Disney. I hadn't worked out yet. Turn your cartoons into live action. Take 30 years to do that, but I was doing it then. So there's only one film worked out of all of that lot, but they're not pretty good first 4 movies. And so I knew I'm on the right track. And so many studios had said to me, why don't you do a film about normal people? I went, what the does that mean? Because no one's normal unless you're totally boring, right? So I then came across a friend. I went back to television commercials, really high-end stuff I was doing. And there was in Paris, I had a French office. And so somebody said to me, I have a friend who would love to have lunch with you. He's got an idea for a film, and it's called Someone to Watch Over Me. It's about a cop falls in love with his god. And so I met with him, and within 10 months, we were making the movie. Now, that didn't do well either. But these are all good movies, so there's something deeply wrong either the audience or marketing. I can go through all of them if you want.
But
I'm not bitter. I'm very happy where I am.
It is the best attitude that one can have, I think. There's the best attitude that one can have to just love all your movies, trust, keep going. But I think there was something you told me about that, like that moment, late 90s, when you saw, once you start this, amazing movies of the last 2 decades, from Gladiator to now. So something in the lines of, you told me like, well, it just decided that whatever I did, it was never going to be a bad movie. Which I think that's a fear of most directors. If I choose this one, it might not end up well, it might not bad. But once you get to that place of trusting that it's never going to be bad, as far as what you is bad movie, right? Like, I mean, people can say whatever they want about this one or that one, but for you, as long as you go, I have the talent, I have the craft, it will be good. That is such a powerful thing for anybody here to trust, regardless of what stage you are, to trust yourself that it's going to be good. It's going to make it work, right?
Yeah. Was that a question?
No, that was your answer. That was your answer to that question of what happened there. Was it because I asked you if you made a pact with the devil in '99 and you said no? Because it felt that way to me.
But, people say, why is it taking so long to do Gladiator II? I said, it's 25 years. I've made, I think, either 17 or 21 movies since that. So I'm not sitting around agonizing over Blade Runner 2. Sorry, Gladiator 2.
No, of course. Okay, so there's, when we talk about all your movies, I always wonder what if, these days, and a lot of you guys here might have made movies for streamers, and I remember having a conversation with a friend where he was worried because he said, I made a couple of movies with one of the streamers, and they only exist in digital servers, that if this company go bankrupt, maybe they will just shut them up and those movies will disappear, so the movies that are not on 35 mil, they're not in print, they might just disappear. So if you would, for hypothetically, if we came to that, if you could save just one of your movies to stay for humanity forever, that to stay, they're all gonna die, you save one that you wanted to stay for people to see for another 100 years, which one would be?
All of them.
No. It cannot be all of them, and it cannot be this one.
I'm very happy about everything I've done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No, it goes beyond.
You see, he's like the kids. He doesn't want to pick one. I want to hear an answer. Okay. You're not going to give me an answer. One. You got to pick one. Come on. I got to press you.
Funny enough, the Duelist. No. I made a film for £65 called Boy and a Bicycle. And because I was at art school, and in a cupboard was a Bolex, and asked the tutor, we're entering the summer holidays. I said, can I borrow the Bolex for the summer holidays? He said, do you know how to use a camera? I said, no. He said, well, but there's an instruction book. And and there's a light meter. It's a Saconic Brockway light. That's an old meter. And he said, you can't have it unless you have a script. So it was a week before we broke up, and I wrote a script in a week, and I was obsessed with the Ulysses at this point because the writer was so, I don't mean the guys with the helmets and shit like that. I mean the Irish one, right? And he was so visual as a writer. I sat down for a week and wrote Stream of Consciousness. So, because we couldn't afford to do sound. And then now we're on holiday, and now there's my little brother who was the laziest little sod ever, who would land on holidays, wouldn't get up till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I managed to borrow my dad's car, and I said, Tony, who later did Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop, get out of bed, you're acting, we're going to make a movie. And so we spent the next 4.5 weeks in this really interesting but pretty rough part of the world called Redcar in the ICI Imperial Chemical Industries. We made this film, and it's surprisingly emotionally sensitive. And Tony actually could have been a really good actor. That's it. I would keep that one.
That one, I love that. Love that. It's I love that because it feels like Rosebud is your Rosebud. Is that thing that everybody's waiting for? Is it going to be Blade Runner? Is going to do this thing? What is the thing that this master will keep? It is the slate. Is that first memory? Is that original thing that really means a lot to you?
Yeah. But I showed it recently because it's now online. I didn't know that it was online. And I'm working with Graham King. Anybody know Graham King? I'm doing the Bee Gees with him in the autumn. And Graham is this very successful producer. And he revealed to me that he'd found it and seen it, and he was quite touched. That really touched me. This tough guy could be quite touched.
I love that. So to wrap it up, I have to ask you a question. Like, how, I know you shot this movie in Malta, you shot all over the place. I feel already I'm too old. Every time I move to another country to make a movie and I pack my things and I go like, what the hell? I want to be at home. How can we, do you think you will make any of these movies in LA? How can we make that happen? How can we bring movies back to Los Angeles?
We're going to talk politics now. Why cannot we make movies in Los Angeles? You know why? Because to try and do, you explained to me that the quantum effect of how things escalate, if you want to do one-day shoot here, makes it impossible. We've really got to change the rules and rethink to help whoever says yes to a tax rebate here. I used to own a studio in London called Shepperton Studios. And we were very well run. And I bought 22 stages, plastic shop, workshops, 2 restaurants, medical center, etc., for £12.5 million. This would probably be just about the price of your garage, right? So from that, we did good business with commercials, a few TV shows, and occasionally you get a film in. I made Alien entirely at Shepperton Studios, and Tony made The Hunger at Shepperton Studios, so that's how efficient it was. I couldn't get the word. I was relying on film for real profit, and they weren't incoming. So at that moment, I remember going to David Putnam and Attenborough, Richard, and said, listen, go to the government and get a proper amount of money, not 200 million. You want about 2-3 billion as tax fund, tax rebates, things to encourage people to come in, because you've got some of the best crews in the world. The same here. I think Stephen once said to me, you know what, problem is we've forgotten how to make a rock look like a rock because we don't make movies here. It's tragic. You invented it. Try and get it back.
We should. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.